A wealthy executive discovers her housekeeper speaking 8 languages to her nonverbal child, and realizes the woman scrubbing her floors holds secrets that will shatter everything she believes about intelligence, worth, and her own son's future. The sharp click of designer heels struck marble as Elena Hartfield, 39, pharmaceutical heiress and ice-cold perfectionist, froze in the doorway of her $38 million estate. Before her sat an unexpected scene. Maria Torres, the Latina woman she'd hired 3 months ago to clean baseboards and dust chandeliers, was seated cross-legged beside her 7-year-old son, speaking softly in what sounded like, "German?" "Excuse me." Elena's voice sliced through the afternoon stillness. "What exactly are you doing with my child?" Maria, 35, rose slowly, gathering the cleaning rags at her feet. For 12 weeks, she'd moved through this house like vapor, unseen, unheard, unacknowledged. Nobody here knew she'd once held tenure positions at multiple institutions before personal catastrophe forced her to accept whatever employment would cover her elderly father's medical expenses. "I apologize, Mrs. Hartfield, I was—" "Simply what?" Elena interrupted, advancing with footsteps that echoed like gavels. "My son Ethan hasn't uttered a single word in 24 months, not one syllable, and now I discover you here, whispering who knows what into his ears." The boy remained motionless on the Persian rug, clutching an illustrated volume. His gray eyes held something Maria recognized instantly, not disability, but dormant brilliance awaiting the correct catalyst. "He approached while I tidied, that's all." The partial truth concealed weeks of careful observation. Maria had noticed Ethan's reactions when she murmured phrases in Portuguese, then Mandarin, watching how his pupils dilated with recognition. Yesterday he'd breathed his first sound in months. "Bonjour." Elena snatched the book from her son's grip. "This is in Russian. Where did this come from?" "The study, ma'am, while organizing." "And you presumed you could conduct experiments on my child?" Elena's eyes narrowed dangerously. "He has profound autism. Top specialists nationwide have confirmed he cannot learn, cannot communicate, cannot progress." Something ignited in Maria's chest. Not anger, but recognition born from encountering 47 similar cases labeled hopeless by people trapped in their own narrow understanding. Sometimes children simply need someone who speaks their heart's language. Elena's laugh dripped condescension. "You, a domestic worker, lecturing me about my own son? A child you've observed for 12 weeks? "Not lectures," Maria replied, kneeling beside Ethan again. "Just possibilities nobody's considered." Then it happened. Ethan lifted his gaze, looked directly at Maria, and whispered words that made Elena stagger backward. "Grazie, signora." The silence felt like breaking glass. Elena blinked rapidly, disbelieving. He just spoke Italian." Maria nodded, eyes bright with restrained triumph. "Children like Ethan aren't damaged, Mrs. Hartfield. They're wired for different frequencies than most people transmit on." Elena stared at her son, then Maria, then back to Ethan, who now studied the Russian text with genuine fascination. For the first time in 2 years, actual presence animated her boy's expression. "How could you possibly know this?" Elena whispered, her armor cracking momentarily. Maria smiled, not victoriously, but with the knowing expression of someone holding power too immense to reveal prematurely. "Let's say I've occupied the other position in conversations like this before. There, in that frigid corridor where wealth purchased everything except understanding, an invisible woman had planted seeds of transformation nobody could foresee. If you've ever been dismissed by someone who should have valued you, then you understand that sometimes the sweetest vindication is simply demonstrating your true capabilities. Stay watching to discover how one underestimated housekeeper not only transformed a silent child's existence, but completely rewrote the destiny of a family convinced that money solved every problem. By sunrise, Elena had reached her decision. She summoned Maria to her private sanctuary, where framed charity gala photographs decorated walls like medallions of manufactured compassion. "We need clarity," Elena began, not offering a seat. "Yesterday was a coincidence. Ethan occasionally makes random sounds. It signifies nothing." Maria stood with hands clasped, silent. "I want zero interaction going forward." Elena paused, contempt flickering. "Actually, perhaps you should focus exclusively on the basement and service quarters. Sandra will handle areas where Ethan circulates." If only she understood, Maria thought. If she knew about the doctorate from Princeton in applied cognitive linguistics, the specialization in multilingual development for neurodivergent populations, and the 19 peer-reviewed publications in international journals. "Of course, Mrs. Hartfield, just cleaning." But Elena wasn't finished. "And since we're establishing boundaries," she leaned back with a cruel smile dancing, "I hope yesterday didn't give you false hope. Ethan has severe autism. 3 leading neurologists confirmed he won't improve, won't communicate normally, won't experience typical development." Each word calculated to wound, yet Maria maintained serene composure. Internally, she recalled the 47 cases she'd documented, children declared lost who now attended universities, commanded multiple languages, and pursued exceptional careers. "I understand your perspective, ma'am." "Perspective?" Elena scoffed. "It's documented medical reality, and I prefer my son not to become an experiment for unqualified staff." That afternoon, reorganizing supplies below, Maria heard footsteps descending. Dr. David Kim, the family's private physician, appeared wearing a contemplative expression. "Sorry for interrupting," he said, confirming they were alone. "We need to discuss Ethan." Maria stopped working. "Is something concerning you?" "Quite opposite. Yesterday's French, that was his first spontaneous verbal output in 24 months. Dr. Kim approached, voice lowering. 22 years of practicing medicine taught me to recognize when children respond to specific stimuli versus producing random vocalizations." Maria's pulse quickened. "And your assessment? Do you have special education training?" Hesitation flickered. Revealing the truth could change everything, or destroy everything. She studied his face for trustworthiness indicators. "Dr. Kim, if I revealed I hold a doctorate in applied linguistics and spent 6 years specializing in childhood cognitive architecture, what would you do with that information?" The loaded silence stretched endlessly. Dr. Kim blinked repeatedly, processing. "You're claiming doctoral credentials?" "Princeton University. My dissertation examined multilingualism in neurodivergent pediatric populations. 19 publications in international scientific literature." My God. He sat on a storage crate. "What's a linguistic doctorate doing working domestic service?" Maria exhaled deeply. "Life intervenes, doctor. I lost my university position when my father fell ill. I needed immediate income for his treatments. That was 13 months ago." Dr. Kim shook his head, absorbing. "Regarding Ethan, you believe you can help?" "I don't believe. I know. He doesn't have severe autism as diagnosed. He displays spectrum characteristics, yes, but primarily suffers from selective mutism combined with acute auditory hypersensitivity. His mother treats him as broken, so he's completely withdrawn." "How can you be certain?" 47 parallel cases, doctor. Over 6 years, I've worked with 47 similar diagnoses. Today, 41 speak multiple languages fluently and lead completely typical lives. Dr. Kim sat silent for long moments. "Ethan has an appointment tomorrow. Elena wants medication increased, claims he's regressing, hallucinating." "He's not regressing. He's progressing. For the first time in 2 years, he's found communication channels that resonate with his neurology." "I know." Dr. Kim extracted a card. "My private contact. If you're willing to help this boy, I'll provide medical support for your methodology, but discretion is essential." After his departure, Maria stood alone, holding the card. For the first time in months, a strategy crystallized. That evening, while Elena attended a social club dinner, Maria did something dormant for 2 years. She called her former linguistics department. "Professor Reynolds? It's Maria Torres." Long silence. "Maria, where have you been? Your research was cited in 4 international journals last quarter. Yale's been attempting contact for 7 months. I'm in temporary circumstances, but need assistance. I need my research files, specifically intervention protocols for selective mutism." 60 minutes later, Maria disconnected with something absent for too long: renewed purpose. James would discreetly send everything needed to develop a personalized program for Ethan. What she didn't know was that Sandra, the head housekeeper, had overheard portions of the conversation upstairs, and tomorrow this intelligence would reach Elena's attention. Meanwhile, in Ethan's bedroom, the boy examined a book discovered beneath his bed, a volume about creatures with names in 7 different languages, which a certain former professor had strategically placed there. "Dog, chien, hund, perro," he whispered, each word sounding like a melody. Because sometimes the most powerful revolutions don't begin with confrontation, but with whispers in darkness, unexpected partnerships, and the patience of those who understand that devastating storms always follow the quietest calm. Next morning, Sandra knocked urgently on Elena's office door, expression mixing alarm and malicious satisfaction. "Ms. Hartfield, I must tell you something about the cleaning woman." Elena glanced up from financial documents, already irritated. "What now?" "Sandra, last night I overheard her telephoning about university research, academic articles." Dramatic pause. "She mentioned being a doctor." Elena blinked repeatedly, processing. "Doctor. Maria." "Yes, ma'am. She discussed 40-something cases of children like Ethan. I think she's misrepresenting her identity to access the boy." Elena's mind raced. A housekeeper teaching languages, discussing academic research, and making Ethan speak. Pieces assembled disturbingly. Summon her immediately. 15 minutes later, Maria entered, finding Elena standing behind her desk, laptop open, wearing an unprecedented expression. "Sit," Elena commanded icily. Maria obeyed, maintaining practiced calm. "You deceived me," Elena began, rotating the laptop toward Maria. On screen, a Princeton University page displayed Dr. Maria Torres's academic profile with impressive publication lists and honors. "I never deceived Ms. Hartfield. I simply didn't volunteer information you never requested." "Never requested?" Elena slammed her palm down. "You allowed me to believe you were merely an uneducated domestic when you're actually a linguistic doctorate specializing in autistic children." "And why would that matter?" Maria asked evenly. "You made abundantly clear from day one that I was invisible, that my role was cleaning without opinions, that people like me possessed nothing valuable to contribute." Elena felt something uncomfortable shift internally. "That's different. You should have disclosed your qualifications. For what purpose? So you could humiliate me more creatively? So you could proclaim that even with a doctorate, I remained just hired help?" The door burst open and Ethan rushed in, followed by Dr. Kim. "Maria! Maria!" Ethan shouted in Portuguese, then switched to French. "J'ai appris une chanson!" Then Spanish. "Puedes enseñarme más palabras?" Elena froze. Her son, who'd been silent for 2 years, had just fluently switched between 3 languages in one breath. Dr. Kim approached calmly. "Elena, I need to show you something." He placed a tablet displaying videos from recent days. "Maria's been discreetly documenting Ethan's development under my medical supervision." First video: Ethan counting to 10 in Japanese. Second, reciting the alphabet in Mandarin. Third, singing a children's melody in Arabic. 8 languages, Dr. Kim continued. In 3 weeks, Ethan not only speaks, he comprehends complex grammatical architecture. His cognitive capacity is exceptional. Elena stared at her son, then Maria, then the videos. How is this possible? Because he never had severe autism, Maria replied, standing and kneeling beside Ethan. He had selective mutism caused by trauma and emotional disconnection. When he found a secure environment and communication modes that aligned with his neurology, he flourished naturally. Ethan turned to his mother and, for the first time in 2 years, looked directly into her eyes. "Mama," he said in English. "Maria dice que soy inteligente." Then Italian. "Lei mi ha insegnato che parlare è bello." Elena felt tears welling. Her son, whom she'd protected as fragile, was standing there articulating with eloquence beyond most children his age. "Oliver," she whispered, kneeling too. You could always communicate?" "Yes, Mama, but you always seemed sad when I tried. So I stopped." He switched to French. "Mais Maria m'écoute et comprend." The overwhelming silence followed. Elena looked at Maria, who watched her with an expression not of triumph, but profound sadness. "I didn't understand," Elena murmured. "I genuinely didn't understand." "I know you didn't," Maria replied softly. "But now you do. The question is, what will you do with this knowledge?" Dr. Kim placed his hand on Elena's shoulder. "Ethan needs to continue with Maria. His progress is extraordinary, but interruption now would be devastating." Elena watched her son playing with colored blocks while counting in Korean, then at Maria, who'd transformed her household invisibly. I need to apologize," Elena said, voice breaking. "And I need to ask you to stay, not as domestic staff, but as Ethan's educator, as the person who returned my son to me." Maria smiled, not victoriously, but with the expression of someone finally seeing a child recognized for his authentic self. "I'll stay, but on one condition. Ethan isn't a miracle or success story. He's simply a brilliant child who needs love for who he is, not what he accomplishes." As Elena nodded, finally comprehending, Ethan approached and took both women's hands. "Mama, Maria," he said in Portuguese, "somos uma família de verdade agora?" There, in that moment, 3 lives transformed forever, proving sometimes the greatest revolutions don't happen in courtrooms or headlines, but in the silence of a child finally finding his voice and the heart of a mother learning to listen. 6 months later, the Hartfield mansion had metamorphosed completely. What was once silent and sterile now overflowed with laughter, multilingual conversations, and most importantly, Ethan's melodious voice echoing through hallways. "Mama, I learned a new Swedish word today," Ethan shouted, running toward his mother working on the terrace. "Kärlek means love." Elena smiled genuinely, an expression rare before. "That's beautiful, sweetheart. Where's Dr. Torres?" "Recording another lesson for the channel," Ethan replied excitedly, switching to Spanish. "Hoy tenemos muchos estudiantes nuevos." The YouTube channel Learning with Ethan had become a global sensation. In 4 months, over 2.3 million people followed Maria's classes, where she taught language development techniques using Ethan as an inspiring demonstration. Donations and educational partnerships had generated over $600,000 for the foundation Elena and Maria created, specifically supporting neurodivergent children. But the channel's success was beginning. Harvard, Stanford, and Princeton entered bidding wars to hire Maria as tenured faculty. 3 publishers fought for rights to her book, The Heart's Language: How Multilingualism Transforms Exceptional Children, which became a bestseller before publication. "Dr. Torres," Victoria said that afternoon, using the title she now insisted on pronouncing with pride. "The foundation received 6 more requests from public schools wanting to implement your methodology." Maria, now wearing elegant professional attire Elena had insisted on providing, smiled while organizing teaching materials. 17 schools in 6 months. I never imagined such reach. And Sandra? Elena asked, referencing the former housekeeper fired after attempting sabotage through malicious rumors among other staff. I hear she's still seeking employment. Apparently, elite families don't hire people with reputations for gossiping about employers on social platforms. Maria replied without malice. Karma operates on its own schedule. Dr. Kim appeared carrying a substantial briefcase. Ladies, incredible news. Your article was accepted in Nature Neuroscience. Additionally, the American Pediatric Association wants you to present your method at their national conference. Elena took a deep breath, watching her son playing in the garden, conversing fluently with a gardener in German. 6 months ago, she believed Ethan would never experience a typical life. Today, he was more articulate than most children his age. You know what impresses me most? Elena said, turning to Maria. It's not just the languages or academic achievements, it's that Ethan finally has light in his eyes. He's genuinely happy. Maria nodded. Children like Ethan don't need fixing, Elena. They just need understanding. That evening during dinner, Ethan made a special announcement. Mama, Dr. Torres, I wrote a thank you letter. May I read it? Both women exchanged curious glances. Dear Mom and dear Dr. Torres, Ethan began, voice clear and confident. Before, I felt trapped inside a glass box. I could see everything, but nobody could hear me. Dr. Torres didn't break the box. She taught me there never was a box. And Mom, thank you for letting her teach me that I've always been perfect exactly as I am. Elena couldn't contain her tears. Neither could Maria. 3 months later, Maria stood on the main stage at the International Special Education Conference before 200 educators from around the world. Ethan, now 8, stood beside her as co-presenter. My name is Ethan Hartfield, he said into the microphone, voice echoing throughout the auditorium. A year ago, doctors said I'd never communicate normally. Today, I speak 9 languages because a woman believed I had a voice from day one. She just had to teach me how to use it. The audience rose in a standing ovation. Elena, watching from the front rows, looked around and saw tears in hundreds of educators, parents, and therapists' eyes. Here stood living proof that labeling a child as limited is often the greatest limitation we can impose. When Maria took the microphone, her voice emerged steady. A year ago, I was invisible in this society. Today, I'm here not because I changed, but because someone finally decided to see me. The same happened with Ethan. He always possessed this capacity. I just created the safe environment for it to flourish. After the lecture, a journalist asked, Dr. Torres, when did you realize Ethan was exceptional? Maria smiled, placing her hand on the boy's shoulder. The first day he looked me in the eye. All children are exceptional. Some just need different languages to reveal their magic. Today, 2 years later, the Ethan and Maria Foundation has transformed the lives of over 11,000 children nationwide. Elena has become a passionate advocate for inclusive education, and Maria has proven that sometimes the greatest revenge against prejudice isn't destroying those who underestimate us, but building something so beautiful and impactful that they have no choice but to recognize our greatness. If this story of overcoming adversity and recognition touched your heart, make sure to like this video and subscribe to Winds of Thought for more stories reminding us that a person's true value can never be measured by their appearance, their occupation, or their background, but by the difference they make in the lives of others.